I love that. I love that.
Well, it's a golden edition of Waking the Red Weekly presented by Footy Talks Live. My name is Michael Singh, and today we are still celebrating Canada coast to coast. One of the biggest, if not the biggest, victory in Canadian soccer history. We're going to be joined by special guests very shortly. We're going to talk some Toronto FC as well. Javier Perez in for the rest of the season after making a gutsy substitution against New York City FC. But before I ramble on too much, let me just quickly introduce my co-host today. The man to my left, Jeffrey P. Nesker. How you doing?
I'm good. It's just the two of us. Mitch is in parts unknown on a well-deserved vacation, probably watching repeats of the Canadian gold medal game on endless loop somewhere tropical. So, best wishes to him. And
as soon as they won, Jeff, this guy booked a vacation to celebrate. If any of you guys did catch our quick special on the Canadian women's national team, me and Mitch did a quick reactionary 30-minute special edition episode. But today we're going to be diving into it a lot more. So without further ado, let me bring on our guest today. And I'm very delighted to be joined by the one and only Meaghen Johnson of TSN, someone who has been at the forefront of all of the coverage with the Canadian women's national team. Some of the best coverage, like I said, in the past. Thank you, Meaghen, very much for joining us and taking the time.
Thank you guys again for having me. Glad to be here.
There we go. And we got a ton to get to. Hey, Jeff, why don't you start us off?
Sure. I mean, obviously, being a passenger on your Twitter adventure for this whole Gold Cup run was quite the ride. I mean, so I guess my first question is, if you had to summarize the entire Olympic run in one sentence, what would it be?
That is a tough one. I've still been struggling to find the words, I think, since Friday or this whole tournament, really. I'll try to boil it down just to one word, and that would be historic. I think this is the best moment in Canadian soccer history, and I don't think you have to differentiate between the men and the women. I just think you say Canadian soccer, nothing tops this.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously culminating in the gold medal, but even beating the Americans in that semifinal, finally ending that 20-year drought there, getting the demons of 2012 off their back on that, just everything about this run. And what I think I love the most is this isn't just about the 22 players that are on the roster. This is about all the players that have come before them and helped to pave this way. Diana Matheson, who retired just shortly before the Olympics, Cara Lane, Rhian Wilkinson, Melissa Tancredi, Charmaine Hooper, the list goes on and on. These players that were playing in empty stadiums before COVID was a thing, they came fourth at the 2003 World Cup. To very little fanfare. I remember Sinclair said before the 2019 World Cup, we came fourth at a World Cup and no one cared. And now to have just all these eyes on them, just unprecedented attention their way, like obviously exceeding what happened in 2012. It's so remarkable, and I think it's absolutely what this team deserves.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just like hearing you talk, they're just, bringing everything. It's goosebumps. Just absolute goosebumps, because it's that important, that significant. And yeah, once again, just delighted to have you along here, because as you guys can already tell, Meaghen is right in tune with all of this. So Meaghen, let me ask you, aside from the winning penalty that Julia Grasso eventually tucked home her celebration, is there one moment in particular from this whole run there at Tokyo 2020 that stands out to you, and then why?
I think I'd have to go with the Jessie Fleming penalty, and it's funny even saying that.
Which one?
Exactly. She took 4 penalties in the knockout round and converted all of them. So I love that I have to say which one. But
Yep.
I'm talking about the one against the Americans, the one that obviously the game winner that clinched it. And just how absolutely clutch she was in that moment. Again, I have to go to a Sinclair quote. She said after the game, when she was talking about Fleming stepping up to take the penalty, she said, "I don't think I know a calmer individual than Jessie Fleming." And it's so true. It's just, you see it in her style of play when she's on the pitch, just always so composed on the ball. And to step up in that moment, let's remember she's 23 years old. I know she's been with the team since she was 15, so it seems like she's a vet, and in many ways she is a vet, but 23 years old to step up for her country in that moment, knowing what it means to score that goal, and just like, that's a perfect penalty.
Yeah.
She hit the side of the net. Like, that is what you want in a penalty. And her knee slide celebration, like, that's
Oh.
become a Canadian heritage moment.
Yeah,
It's absolutely
definitely.
fantastic. So
I
sorry,
I don't know if I could ever pull that off. I mean,
Oh,
I think my kneecaps would be raw. Like I don't think I have the skill for that.
I
Like
think I would face plant if I had tried that. I would go to my knees and just, yeah, no, it would not have been pretty. But
absolutely.
she pulled off the penalty and she pulled off the celebration as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
So just all around
absolutely.
tens.
It was, yeah, what a moment. And you know what's funny about that, Meaghen, is for whatever reason, I thought, and I'm sure Canada's with me here, I thought Christine Sinclair would be the one to step up to take that shot.
Mhm.
And I think that speaks volumes to sort of the character that Christine Sinclair has, because if she wanted that shot, I'm sure Christine Sinclair can get that shot.
Mhm.
But like you said after the game, she said, Jessie Fleming, that's the individual who, you know, I probably wanted to take that kick. And, you know, that speaks volumes about her, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It really was the passing of the torch moment where you see there was that symbolic moment where Sinclair handed the ball to Jessie Fleming. And Fleming said afterwards it was more so Sinclair didn't want the ball in the hands of the Americans, so she was trying to get it away from them. So maybe not quite the symbolism that we want it to be, but it ended up being that moment. And
Yeah.
it was kind of the moment we hoped had happened in 2019
I
when
was about
Janine
to say,
Becky,
yeah.
when she stepped up to take the penalty against Sweden. And again, everyone thought, oh, it's Sinclair, she has to take it. Becky stepped up and her save was shot at or stopped. And I will say, Lindahl made an excellent save on that penalty. I hear a lot that Janine Becky missed the shot. Like, no, like, let's give credit. Lindahl made a really good save on that shot.
Mhm.
It was a good penalty. It was a better save. So
Yep.
it's just, unfortunately, because that penalty was or ended up being stopped, the narrative becomes, why didn't Sinclair take that shot? That should have been Sinclair. But now in these Olympics, we got that moment that we wanted in 2019, that passing of the torch, where it was the next generation, or really the current generation of players, and Jessie Fleming taking that stage in that moment, and again just absolutely delivering. But yeah, absolutely, to talk about Sinclair and her character, I think she understands just the importance it is for other players to step up, that she knows she's not going to be around forever. So it is really important that, come the day that she does retire, these other players are already have that experience in these big moments to say, yep, I can do this. Absolutely.
Well
Yeah.
said.
I mean, to answer your question, Mike, I would have to say gutsy. I mean, right from the get-go of this run, from Bev making the tough choices in terms of the roster selection and maybe freezing out some players that we expected to be there. I'm looking at Sophie Schmidt and Jordan Heidema, who eventually, ended up on the roster after some changes to the rules. But I mean, for Cincy to pass the ball to anybody on a penalty kick, so soon after 2019. It doesn't matter. Jessie Fleming, Jeannie Becky, anybody it's once again gutsy. Like, the subs,
Especially in the moment.
Especially in the moment. I mean, we all know that the keeper is on the same club team as Cincy, so there was that factored into it. But still, how gutsy of a move, knowing full. I mean, they're not even 2 years removed from the backlash for the last time they tried to do that. So it really is. It's mind-boggling. The gutsiness, the just so impressive. And that's a great segue. Which player is most impressed?
I got asked this about, it was just before the gold medal game, and I said, well, let me just run through like almost
Yeah,
the
the
entire
whole.
roster. So I will try to highlight a few. I mean, I've talked about Fleming already, but I will say I think she did really well. It's funny in again her post game comments after the U.S. game, she had said besides the penalty, she didn't think she played that well in that game. I actually thought she had her best game against the Americans. I
Mhm.
thought that something about playing the Americans, I think, seems to bring out the best in her, where we just see that fluidity to her game, the playmaking ability. I think she got a lot more forward in that game than she had in previous ones as well, which is what you want to see from Fleming. But just in terms of other players, like I know Steph Labbe, what more can you say about her and just the tournament she had? And
Wow.
I am fully willing to admit I was wrong on this, because before the tournament, I felt pretty strongly that Kaylin Sheridan should be Canada's starting keeper, just
Mhm.
for the performances she's had with her club at Gotham FC. I thought she was more on form going into the tournament. And it actually kind of looked, or I thought that maybe Bev Priestman was leaning in that direction. If you look at Canada's two friendlies they had before the Olympics,
Yeah.
Labbe started against the Czech Republic, and then Sheridan got the start against
Yep.
Brazil, who's obviously the stronger team. So I thought maybe Bev was leaning in that direction, but in the end, she went with the experience of Labbe, and hard to fault her going with that in the end. Just what she did in those penalties, and now her smile at the Swedish players has just become iconic as she's
It's
smiling at them.
fantastic.
It's amazing. And she said, afterwards as well, that she was enjoying herself. She said, there is no pressure on me. I am not expected to make those saves. It is on the penalty takers. And she's absolutely right. Like, it's never on the goalkeeper to make those saves in those situations, but for her to come up in both the Brazil game and of course Sweden, making two massive saves, like massive. Yeah, what more can you say? And even in the run of play, like especially in that Brazil game, she had another handful of just remarkable saves to keep Canada in it as well.
Mhm.
And then going ahead to the back line, I mean, Vanessa Gill, just a
Yeah.
breakout star. Just we talked about her, I know, from the She Believes Cup and her
Yep.
breakout tournament there, and for her to continue it as well. And I just have to point out, she didn't start playing soccer until she was 16 years old. She's
Wow.
25 now. Yeah. She was a tennis player. She told the media this before the tournament. She played tennis until she was about 16 and then decided, no, this isn't for me. She actually said there wasn't enough physical contact in tennis for her. So she decided to pick up soccer at high school, and now she's Olympic gold medalist. It's just unreal. But again, you talk about Bev Priestman and kind of the brave decision she made to put Gilles starting at center back, starting in the knockout round in that game against Brazil over Shalina Zadorsky. Obviously,
Yep.
Zadorsky and Buchanan, longtime partners on the back line in the center back role, but for Priestman to give Gilles the nod. And Gilles, admittedly, she was a little shaky in that first half against Brazil. She made a couple mistakes. She gave the ball away right to Debinha, which is not
Yep.
the player you want to give the ball away to at all.
Nope.
But she really calmed down after that. Like, you talk about her timely tackles, her ability in the air is almost unparalleled, I think, in terms of her ability just to connect, not only on her own back end, but she had that chance on a set piece where she hit the crossbar
Yep.
against Brazil as well, almost had her first international goal there, but just so steady. And then talking about her own penalty, again, in that game against Brazil, where she was the fifth penalty taker. And we're talking at that point, she had under 10 caps for Canada. But for her
Wow.
to, again, just to step up in that moment, be that fifth penalty taker, which is, I think, a really daunting task for anyone, let alone, again, talking about someone just with so little international experience at this point in her career. But just quite remarkable, her poise in that situation. So really looking forward to seeing to what she brings to the back line for Canada in the future.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well said. The human magnet. I think she rightfully so earned that nickname with the amount of times that she headed away the ball. So yeah, you touched a little bit on the goalkeeping, the defense, the play of Jesse Fleming. I think we can all agree that Canada had a really well-rounded team in this tournament. The biggest question mark was obviously going to be their attack, where the goal is going to consistently come from. So Meaghen, let me ask you, what do you think Canada's biggest strength overall in this tournament was?
I think it is their backline. Absolutely. That's been their strength for many years now, and they just continued it. I think, again, they were a little shaky in the group stage. I don't think they performed overall to their best ability. They allowed a goal in each of the three games in the group stage, which you just don't see very often from Canada. And most of them, they came just from defensive lapses, which, again,
Yeah.
just uncharacteristic for that back line. In the first game against Japan, it was just seemed to be a miscommunication between Buchanan and Zadorsky that allowed Iwabuchi to slip through.
Yep.
The second game against Chile, I think Zadorsky just mistimed or just made a mistake where I don't think she needed to go to ground there. If I remember, Buchanan was basically in stride with the Chilean attacker in that. So again, just uncharacteristic mistakes, I think, but I think they really settled down in that group stage, and we
Definitely.
saw the defensive organization that we're used to seeing from them. And I think it's not only the back line, the four in the back, but it's the whole team. You see them just really dedicated to tracking back to making those defensive plays. And, they say defense wins championships, and it was proven true. Like, Canada had 6 goals the entire tournament. Like, Vivian Miedema for the Netherlands had 10 by herself. So,
Yep.
there's still probably the questions of, well, this team can't really score goals, but maybe it doesn't matter as much as it used to.
I mean, I'm glad you said that because, yeah, I think that that's still an issue with the team moving forward. Where do the goals come from? But I've never been less concerned about it.
Meaghen, we touched on her a little bit, but I think we definitely have to give her some kudos. This was her first major tournament in charge of the Canadian women's national team. What a test it was to really, the Tokyo Olympic Games, probably the biggest, if not the second biggest tournament in Canadian women's soccer. And she's done a remarkable job, not only at the tournament itself, but getting the team prepared for this tournament. Can we just talk a little bit about the job that Bev Priestman has done? And if you were to give her a grade, let's say, what would you give her?
I think she's earned an A, not an A plus, right? I mean, what more can you ask of her, really, to deliver gold, to deliver the first title from a major tournament ever for this country, for this program? The mantra was, well, they've had a couple. They said, change the color of the medal. Obviously, they did that. And since Priestman came on board last fall, she said she wants this team and these players to be brave. And that's been, again, just her mantra throughout her run so far. And I think not only has the team done that, I think they're playing with a lot more confidence under Priestman than we saw under Heiner Muller, her predecessor. But I think as well, she's shown bravery herself. You talked about the roster decisions she made, naming Sophie Schmidt as an alternate. Eventually, obviously, she did become part of the full roster, but that turned a lot of heads when you're leaving off someone with over 200 caps who's just been, again, a mainstay on this roster for how many years now. And then same thing, naming Evelyn Vienne maybe over Jordan Heidema. Just tends to get a lot more headlines than Evelyn Vienne, but I do agree. I think at least going into that tournament, Vienne was more on form than Heidema, though I think Vienne probably didn't have the tournament and the performance that maybe she had hoped for. But even just looking at her Bev Priestman's decisions in the tournament itself, I think she made tactically just a lot of right moves. I look at that gold medal game. She subbed out Janine Becky for the second half, and I think Becky did look off in that first half. She would probably, again, be the first one to admit it. She's always been very honest in her own self-assessment. And I think bringing on not only Leon, but Julia Grosso, although I was, a little, I thought Quinn was playing very well. I thought they had a fantastic tournament again. But in terms of what Grosso brings, she's a little more dynamic in her play. She tends to get, again, a little more forward than Quinn does. Quinn tends to be a little more defensive-minded, kind of playing almost side by side with Scott as that holding midfielder. So just to try to obviously bring a spark to the offense, bringing on Leon, who, again, just very technical, loves to live on the ball, much like Rosso as well. And I think you saw that in that second half, at the start of the second half. Canada had a lot more jump to them. They were really bringing it to Sweden, and that's what ultimately led to the penalty, led to Sinclair being brought down in the box, and to that penalty from Fleming again. So, again, just going back to the mantra of being brave, I think Priestman showed that. She asked that of her players, and she delivered it herself. She was the only female coach in the Final Four of the tournament as well, need to note. Also the youngest coach at the tournament. I believe she's 35 now.
Wow.
So just remarkable what she's been able to accomplish in a very short runway. Like, she took over the role in October, and she
Yep.
didn't have her first game as head coach until February. So it's quite remarkable what she's been able to do.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely. You spoke a bit on Cincy, and we just got a question actually on the same subject, which is, what do you think's next for Cincy? We saw her in this in sort of a more midfield kind of holding role, as opposed to the spear at the tip of the attack. I thought it was a successful move for Cincy. Do you see that going forward, and do you see her continuing towards the next tournament, or do you think this might be the well-deserved swan song for the greatest athlete that this country's probably ever produced?
We'll say only Christine Sinclair knows for sure if this is it for her, or if she's going to retire. I know she did say immediately afterwards she doesn't want to make a decision based purely on emotion, whether it's, losing or in this case winning. She wants to give it some time. Exactly, yeah. If she does continue playing, yeah, I think this now adapted role for her is very well suited for where she is in her career. It's similar now to the role she plays with Portland as well, where it's basically that false nine, and allowing the wingers, the usually younger winners, to get forward and to drive the attack that way. But I think, as I said, it is very well suited for her, and I think it still allows her to find those spaces and to find those runs when they open up. Her goal against Japan, I think, was a prime example of that, where she saw the play develop, she knew what Nichelle Prince wanted to do, and she got herself into that space. And that's so much of what Christine Sinclair's career and her goals have been about. A lot of people will say, well, right place at the right time. Well, it's more than that. She knows where to be, and she's thinking 5 steps ahead almost constantly. So I think,
she makes it look easy, but
she does. She makes it look effortless. But she's always thinking, and she always knows just, okay, I need to be there at this point, or whatever the case may be. And she's one of the best in the world at doing that, if not the best, quite honestly. So I think, if she does continue with both club and country, I think that's the role that she will continue to play. It'll be interesting to see how much longer she's a starter as well. Obviously, she's still a big time contributor, I think, to the team, just in terms of leadership, and again, just her ability off the ball as well as on the ball. But yeah, as I said, only Sinclair knows her future for sure. So we'll give it some time, and we'll see what she decides. But
you wouldn't know. Sorry,
I was just going to point out as well, I always need to point this out. Formiga on Brazil is 43, and she's still playing. So it's very possible. And if anyone wants to continue playing into their 40s, it's Christine Sinclair.
It's Christine Sinclair. I wonder, I don't know this offhand, but has she even considered going for coaching badges, or for transitioning to that aspect of the game? Because
not that I've heard,
Okay.
I've never heard her talk about being involved on that side of the game or have an interest in coaching. Not to say that she doesn't. It's just not anything she's ever really talked about.
Yeah, I can imagine that wouldn't even enter into her field of thought until she puts a stop to her playing career.
And she would make a really good coach. But yeah, Meaghen, I know you have to run here, so you've been super generous with your time. So thank you very much. You guys can all follow her work at Meaghen Johnson. Good luck spelling that first name, though, so let me just spell it out a little bit. Meaghhen, Meaghen Johnson. Follow her on Twitter. She's going to be at BMO Field today for some Canadian Women's National Team press conference. So, once again, she gets some of the best tidbits out there. highly recommend you go check out her work. Maybe if I don't think Christine Sinclair is there today, but next time maybe you can ask Christine Sinclair about her coaching badges because she could make a very good coach. But yeah, thank you, as Colin saying in the chat.
Thank you
great
so
guest.
much.
Thank you,
Always,
guys.
always a
Appreciate
pleasure
it.
to have you.
Yeah.
Good luck today with the presser.
Thanks so much. Take care, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers. All
You
right.
cut
Yeah,
me
that
off.
was.
I didn't get to ask the real question of the day.
I know. I
so-
had to, man. I had to.
I know. It would have been huge. So maybe let's the two of us discuss it. You know, what's next? We've got some serious momentum now, and I'm sure you've been privy to the Twitter argument at hand. You know, I'm firmly on the side of an NWSL squad. We've proven the concept. You know, NWSL to the major Canadian markets, which would be Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto, built-in infrastructure. NWSL has existing partnerships with media and broadcast. The cost of entry is relatively cheap. You're looking at another MLS model where the franchise value rises exponentially. So it is a sound investment. I see too many issues with this idea of starting from scratch with a brand new women's league, Pan-Canadian women's league at this juncture. I think that it's a hell of a lot to chew. It's a huge bite to chew. You know, to me, NWSL is the answer. And I think the more we bandy around waiting, trying to create a perfect solution that isn't NWSL, it's almost to our peril. And I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good debate. Regardless if it's an NWSL team, a Canadian professional women's league, we're going to see something in the near future.
That's a very fair point. We have
Right.
to. I mean,
I do believe, Jeff, that Canada is more than capable of sustaining a Canadian women's professional league. There is, you know, similar infrastructure in place. Obviously, we look at the Canadian Premier League. We can even look down to the League One Women's League in here in Ontario.
Sure.
You know, there is some infrastructure in place. And when you think about the support that this women's national team has gotten over not just this year, but over the years in the past,
4.4 million eyeballs. That's not nothing in this country. For
it
a
was
game at 7.
It was the most watched event of the Olympics in Canada.
Yep.
Not just, you know, not just soccer match, like the whole entire Olympics.
You love to see it.
That was the gold medal match for Canada. And you know what? Like Jeff, like I was just saying, it's not just this Olympics. This isn't just some revelation. Whenever we go to a Canadian women's professional or national team match, that stadium has been more sold out than the men's national team's games.
Yep. Yeah, we're on a decade here, a decade of momentum that just culminated in changing the medal.
It's such an untapped market right now, Jeff. And I think regardless of which way they decide to go, whether that is an NWSL team or a full-on Canadian women's professional league, it's gonna strive, it's gonna succeed. And you know, I'll give a quick shout out to Josie Altidore there on Twitter.
Thank you. Yep.
We all saw his post, right, at the NWSL to Toronto soon, rocking that NWSL shirt. And obviously in the photo, he tagged a lot of high-profile individuals that would be, you know, in support of bringing that NWSL team to Toronto. So I think, you know, maybe there's something out there that he knows that maybe we don't. Regardless, it's a bit too late for this to be happening, but it's better late than never, right?
Yeah, better late than never. And Josie's got that Real Salt Lake investment money just burning a hole in his pocket. So I think this is a far better expenditure for him. Yeah. I mean, Graham is saying the same thing. He says, here, let's bring it up. It's a bit of a scroller, so I'll read it out. Building on the Olympic team's momentum is huge, but to go to a national league seems like too big a jump too quickly. With an NWSL club for the major markets, you can build on the link to the Canadian MLS clubs. You have a strong marketing team in place and financial booking. So he's essentially speaking in tones of what I was saying. I mean, I just think it's the more realistic option. I'm not saying that there can never be a Canadian women's domestic league. I mean, that's the goal. But right now, you know, you strike while the iron is hot. I know that sounds insane considering this has been such a slow burn, but you know, 4.4 million eyeballs is going to turn a lot of heads. A gold medal performance is going to turn a lot of heads. things that maybe would have taken 6-7 months to just get, you know, a response are now going to happen in a week. So I agree with you. This is, you know, that's just how it works. We live in a crazy world, and there's a motivation now. There's an audience now. The time is right for someone to jump in, and I think the easier it can be, the quicker it happens. And I don't believe in perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. So too many of these Twitter suppositions suggest this perfect Canadian Women's League where, you know, benevolent billionaires are just throwing money at it, and I there's too many moving parts that can go wrong when you know the other option with the NWSL is about as close to a plug and play option as you can get. Do you know what I mean? In a way that even TFC wasn't, right? You know, TFC was incumbent on building BMO Field. Well, we have BMO Field now. We've got the infrastructure. You know, there's staff at MLSE that could easily double down on a TFC women's team. So I mean, and again, Graham is saying the casual fan may have a certain brand loyalty to TFC, and that would bring them to the NWSL. I mean, I'm ducking because that's a powder keg of a statement, but I think there is some truth in there. You know, TFC is decades old, and there is a brand identity in this city that you can parlay. I don't necessarily think the women's game needs any help from the men's game, especially now, but you certainly can't look a gift horse in the mouth. So Graham does raise an interesting point.
Yeah, for sure. And also, just speaking of like striking when the iron's hot, good segue here is, guys, make sure you go follow that CAN Women's National Team Twitter account. Brand new, just started yesterday, and I just had a peek. It's already at 11.1 thousand followers.
So you were wrong on your guess. What were you, like 8,537? I don't know how you got
67.
that number. 67. Okay. Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
just
I did
spam my keyboard and whatever came up.
I did the Price is Right guess. I did $9,001 just to show.
That was close. It was at 9999, I think, at 9 a.m. this morning.
Oh wow.
So a lot of you guys were close. But yeah, go make sure you guys follow that account dedicated solely to the women's national team. I think, honestly, long time overdue, but credit to them for, like I said, striking when the iron is hot. And it's such a untapped. I wish we could do more here at Wake in the Red for the women's national team, just based on capacity. Obviously, there's a lot that we try and get to, but there's just so much content and coverage that you could do for that team. And I hope that, you know, we talk about what's going to happen next. I hope that we see some sort of spark from all of this, that this coverage in this country for the women's national team just erupts, because like I said, there's just so much untapped potential there, and I'm excited to see where that goes. So make sure you guys keep an eye on that account.
I'm excited. I mean, as good as a dedicated Twitter account is, I would sacrifice it for the ability to buy men's sizes in women's kits and women's sizes in men's kits at the new Fanatic store. I think we're doing a disservice if we don't at least take them to task, the CSA, because I think they left a lot of money on the table. That the one T-shirt that they dropped upon the gold medal win was available in men's sizes only, which is patently insane. And there's still the rig. Now, again, I'm not going to generalize because we don't know the background. You know, this could be supply chain issues, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But figure it out, guys. I mean, there's money on the table here. You have a captive audience that wants to buy your merch. Make it happen. Make it happen. I mean, there's got to be a way.
6 months ago, they didn't even have merch, so I think just baby steps here. I'm not as heated as I think you are there, Jeff, but rightfully so.
No, because you don't want a Chapman shirt as badly as I do. I want an Alicia Chapman shirt.
Man, I was looking hard for that Sinclair men's shirt, and it wasn't there. I know there's like loopholes around it, like you can customize the national team shirt, but it's not the exact same national team shirt.
The name set isn't the same, and now you're dealing with you're setting off my Kittner but OCD. So no, I want what they wear. I want what my heroes wear on the field, right? Like, so
for sure.
Yeah. Be better. Absolutely.
That's so mean.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I quickly on that though, I do want to commend the Canadian, national team account in general for its fantastic coverage during that Olympic run. Because really, whoever's running the socials there, nonstop,
Mhm.
nonstop, and I love to see it. So thank you for all of the great coverage that you did provide there. Just fix the store, guys. That's all
Yeah,
Jeff
just fix
wants.
the
Just
store.
fix the store.
Just fix the store, and just retweet everything Meaghen tweeted, because it was an adventure following
Seriously,
her account over the course of the run.
seriously.
I mean, we've got a counter proposal. The problem with here, I'll bring it up. Problem with going to the NWSL is we have no control, and that league doesn't care about Canadian teams at all. So we can beg to be let in. I mean, they care about money, and money talks. I don't think the NWSL doesn't actively is actively against having a Canadian franchise, and I do think money trumps all. Again, we're getting into this gray area of what is perfection, right? Like, TFC is in an American league, and we've just suffered through those border issues that you're mentioning right now. I mean, it is what it is, right? Like, it's not going to be perfect. No one is saying, I'll be the first to say it won't be perfect, and there'll be warts and there'll be growing pains, but it will be. We can sit here and argue until we're blue in the face about what's the best solution, and then we're 5 years later and there's no league. I think, warts and all, you got to jump in. I think it's actually a good thing that we know all the crap that we may have to endure. Like, we're not rookies at this. We've been through the MLS side of the angle, and that prepares us for what we may have to face on the NWSL end. But to dismiss it out of hand for the potential of perfection, which is unachievable, I think is a fool's errand. If I'm going to be honest, NWSL is such an easier path, and to ignore it and try and set up something cold, I don't know. I vehemently disagree with that. I think NWSL is the way to go, and it may suck, but at least it will be a team.
Yeah, I don't know too much on that front with the NWSL not liking Canadian teams or Canadian whatever it is. I know they did support the Josie Altidore tweet recently. Again, that is recency bias, so I don't know what kind of path there is, but there always is a path forward. Whether it is NWSL, like I said, let's wrap up this conversation here. But
sure,
whether it is
I can tell you, I can tell you want to wrap up the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. We've been kind of rambling on about it, but anyways, whether it is an NWSL team or a Canadian league, regardless, god damn, there needs to be some sort of professional women's team league here in Canada for all the talent that is coming through this country. The fact we won an Olympics with no domestic professional league in Canada is absolutely insane. And just imagine if we had an Olympic team or a domestic league to support that Olympic team, how much better we would be. So on that note, some more
you raised the point. Would a domestic league right now, and I know you don't want to talk about this, but
I don't want to talk about it.
A domestic league right now, the Heidemas would still be going to PSG, right? The Cincy's would still
sure, but there's millions the people behind them.
Right.
Heidemas behind those guys. Some of these, there's going to be 1 or 2, 3 different names that could pop up through that infrastructure, and potentially crack that. It starts somewhere as well, right? There's millions and millions of girls, ladies out there that are desperate for a league. So it is what it is. But yeah, Jeff, please let's move on. Let's talk about the Canadian men's national team quickly, and more positive Canada soccer news is the men's national team is returning home for the first time since the global pandemic. I think for the first time since October 15th, 2019, they're going to be playing 3 matches, 3 World Cup qualifiers in front of home fans there at BMO Field. Jeff, how excited are you for this?
The second I can buy tickets, they are mine. I am immeasurably, unbelievably excited for a return to BMO Field for the men's national team. I am champing at the bit for this World Cup qualification cycle. I'm unbelievably excited. We've got We've got revenge to dish out to some CONCACAF sides that wronged us, the sooner the better. I want to see that place packed, though. I do. Bearing in mind the pandemic restrictions, I'd like to see Toronto come out for our boys.
Big facts. Yeah. I want to see that as well. BMO Field, 15,000. It can get loud, but just imagine if there's 20, what is it, 22, 23,000 fans. They're just as hungry as we are to see the men's national team back in action. It would be so much more electric. Colin in the chat before telling us to move on, he really wanted to tell us about Alphonso Davies in this men's national team, which is why he was telling us to move on. Alphonso Davies is back in training with the full Bayern team, meaning, it's more than likely, especially if you know the type of character Alphonso Davies is and how much he wants to represent Canada, more than likely he will be available for those September matches, barring some sort of setback, which is just positive news for this men's national team, especially, as they start this run. And, every game is going to be important.
Every last one. Yep.
Every last one, right? It's the top 4 teams that you have to get into in order to essentially book your place at the Qatar 2022? Yeah, 2022 World Cup. So positive news there. But I think, on that note, we can move on and chat some TFC, because it was, Jeff, a wild week for TFC. It feels like, in a sense, especially, after that game against Philadelphia and the first half against New York City FC, it felt as though the team was taking 3 steps backwards. Before we chat about that second half, Jeff, I just wanted to get your thoughts on that Philadelphia Union game in general.
Yuck.
Again,
Yuck.
At Subaru Park there, whatever it is about Subaru Park, Philadelphia just seems to have our number there, Jeff. Well, what do you think went wrong there?
Everything. I think the game plan was wrong. I think the formation was wrong. I think TFC. I don't know if this is specific to TFC. I don't think it's fair to say it's a TFC thing, but sometimes it's just not your night, and there's nothing you can do. Sometimes it's just not your night, and they took it to us, and our body language was terrible, and our drive and commitment wasn't there. This is all, it's all tough to see when they're your squad and their backs against the wall as a consequence of such a poor start. But sometimes it's just not your night, and it doesn't matter that you're chasing a playoff berth and that you need 3 points desperately and that this and that and this. I think that's about as much as you can say. You're not going to win 100% of the time, even if you're you're just not. No team does. So let's chalk that one up to just the
whatever it was.
Whatever it was, bad
that's
catering,
the same,
right?
That's the same sentiment that Javier Perez offered kind of after the game. It's just that they were sort of due for one of those games. Michael Bradley, Colin saying in the chat again, I'd like to know what MB4 really thinks. I mean, I don't know if this is what he really thinks, but after the chat, he, after the game, he was pretty honest when we had a chat. He said that TFC essentially can't afford many more of those performances, if any at all. He was definitely not happy after that game. Jeffy talked a little about the setup. Yeah, for me, I think that's what kind of took the life out of this team. Is there were too many times where when they started to get forward, they would be dropped backwards. They would they would lose possession quickly. Kamar Lawrence on the wing was isolated way too often. He's not a player that can beat someone 1v1. And the reality is when you're caught in a game like that, where you're just constantly going up the field, hoping to get some sort of sustained pressure, and you're constantly losing possession, eventually when you're defending the whole game, you're bound to concede, especially when you have a backline like Toronto FC's, which is clearly not their strength. So this team isn't made to just be defending the whole game, and obviously that showed against Philadelphia. But as Will Dunn said in the chat, the same thing sort of carried on against New York City FC. Now, I'd argue that the performance against New York City FC was slightly better than the one against Philadelphia, but not by a lot in the first half.
I think
New
they're
York City
very different teams. I mean, New York City,
I was just about to say.
has such flair on the ball. Their passes were like diamond sharp in the first half. They were cleaving us in half, right? I think the Philly game we were getting isolated on the wings. The NYC first half we were getting destroyed up the center of the park, right? They were just toying with our defensive midfield. I mean, let's not mince words. They were toying with Michael Bradley until the second half.
Well, the thing about that game too is if you look at the goals that TFC conceded against Philadelphia, none of those goals that TFC conceded were really like, wow, good goal, Philadelphia, like great job. It was literally just simple passes through the back line that, essentially cost TFC. And if you look at the game against New York City FC, the first goal, they made it a little bit too easy on New York City FC, but you kind of got to, give credit where credit's due. That's a couple of terrific give and goes, a nice tidy play that was finished off. And the second goal was just an error at the back where Eric Zavaleta, who's put under pressure by Kamar Lawrence, eventually gave the ball away to New York City FC, and they capitalized on their chance.
Yep.
It wasn't necessarily a simple one-pass breakdown by New York City FC that penetrated the TFC defense like we saw against Philadelphia, which is why I'm kind of leaning towards giving the credit where credit, I guess, is due in terms of it was a better performance. But those are fixable mistakes, whereas Philadelphia, it just looked like the team was just off on all different types of I don't even know, different types of wavelengths, whatever. But Jeff, second half.
Yep.
Javier Perez, the man with
makes
the
the subs. Makes the subs.
What gutsy. Use the word gutsy here in the show, but this is the epitome of gutsy. Substitutions. He took off two players who are undoubtedly going to have statues outside of the stadium when all is said and done. And he had the nerve to take both of those guys off at halftime. Jeff, I know hindsight's 2020, but try and take yourself back to when that happened.
It was like 45 degrees in BMO. I was sweating through my clothes. It was.
Did you have a reaction? Did you have a reaction?
Yeah, I mean, my reaction was holy S, and then the second half kicked off, and it was followed by a more resounding holy S, because we look like a different team out there. I mean, I don't know what he said in the halftime talk, but wow. And Will said it here. Halftime is when intern Perez became Coach Perez. Notebook rules. I think behind the scenes he's been Coach Perez since the beginning. But for him to ante up that kind of cojones, it really can't be understated. And Prizo, I don't think he's ever looked better. I don't think he's ever had a better half in a TFC shirt. And I know Achara's debut was unbelievable, but I loved watching him terrorize that New York City FC back line for 45 minutes. I thought it was absolutely wonderful.
Yeah,
I just love what they brought.
For sure. And my reaction there when Bradley and Altidore were taken off is the same thing as you, Jeff. Like, wow. I mean, we were looking around at each other in the press box. We had people scrambling to find like the last time Michael Bradley was subbed off during a match. And the nerve of Javier Perez to do that. And let me just quickly pull up a good quote from Perez after the game. Question was, Michael is not used to being substituted out of games. What was that conversation with him like when you told him that he would be taken out of the game at halftime? And this was Perez's response. He said, I think it's difficult. It's a difficult situation, right? Because Michael is the captain. Michael is a tremendous player with an amazing history. He's the heart and soul of the team. But tonight, the team needed something different. And we made a change just for the good of the team. That man is a savage. There has not been a coach yet that has coached Michael Bradley with Toronto FC, and I'm talking Greg Vanney, Chris Armas, and now I guess Javier Perez, that was willing to be the person to take off Michael Bradley during a match. Michael Bradley is a machine that could go to 90 minutes. You know, we've questioned in the past whether or not someone will eventually come along to be able to do that. He's 33 years old. And you mentioned what Ralph Priso and Achara brought there. And for me, the biggest difference was when you took both Bradley and Altidore off the pitch, is that TFC lacked a lot of energy. So when you brought the likes of Achara and Priso, people who can cover ground quickly. You know, Michael Bradley's 33 years old. Josie Altidore runs like 1.5 kilometers every game. So when you have guys who can all of a sudden cover ground, and you already have people like Pozuelo, you know, even Soteldo's work rate isn't the greatest. You have Kamar Lawrence, you have Omar Gonzalez, Eric Zavaleta, even throw Ozo into that mix. None of those guys are people who get up and down the pitch extremely well. None of those guys are very, you know, great at their movement. And you know, the one difference about Achara, we'll talk about him quickly, is that he offered something Josie wasn't, and that was getting in behind.
Yep.
Putting a threat that can actually make runs through the channels for people to play that ball through. And we saw, obviously, on that goal, like with Pozuelo, Achara is the one who gets played through by Ralph Priso.
Yep.
And you mentioned there, like, I don't know if we've had a better half really by Ralph Priso. He's had some really good performances so far in a TFC uniform. That might have just been his best.
Alongside Michael Bradley. I mean, this has been brought up in the chat. This is the first time we've seen Priso without Bradders on the pitch. And it's going to be a difficult image to get out of my head, because he was electric. I mean, he was doing all the things that Bradley wasn't against that side. And New York City had no response. I mean, they had no response for the injection of pace and hunger that those subs made.
And you know what that ultimately resulted in, Jeff? Is that TFC started playing higher up the field. They started playing on the front foot. They were not, like you said, New York City had no answer. TFC weren't giving them time to find an answer.
Exactly.
When you have players like Achara pressing the ball down, when you have players like a Ralph Priso closing down, and ability not only to close down, but the ability to recover when you do get beaten, it just, New York City FC is just left searching for answers. So then let me pose this to you, Jeff. After those performances, do you think now we see more of those two guys, and do you think they deserve more playing time now the rest of the way, or is like a half enough for those type of players?
This is a really small sample size, and those subs, as gutsy as they were made to address an in-game problem, right? They were specifically designed to address problems that were manifesting in the game. Josie wasn't running; he was offering nothing up front, and it was like having one less player on the pitch, right? We can argue until we're blue in the face as to whether this is a singular example from this one game, or whether this is a pervasive problem with Josie. And, you know, everybody's got an opinion, but let's strike that from the record. He needed to go. Bradley, I would almost wonder if, you know, if Javi went up to Bradley before he told him he was subbing him and said, you know, Mike, you're getting scorched out there, or maybe even Bradley came up to Javi and said, I just don't have it tonight. You know, like they're absolutely owning me. Like I don't think we can do this. So, you know, do they get a start next game? Probably not. These are still our two DPs, and, you know, this is a DP and a former DP / soul of the team. But do they go 90 when they're getting found out again? Probably not. I think we've turned a corner now, where it's now safe. I mean, it's always been safe to sub Josie. It's been safe to sub Josie for 2 years. Bradley's a different beast altogether. I think now we're in a position where we may have changed the tune with Michael Bradley. And you know, it happens to everybody, right? Like time is undefeated. So now we see Bradley utilized in a far more intelligent way, where he's not just an instant penciled in starter that plays 90 minutes, but maybe, you know, he gets a start, and if the team is is too pacey for him, then he sits for the second half, which I think is a way better way to approach the Michael Bradley, aging situation than it was just trotting him out for 90, regardless of opponent, regardless of team shape, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's nice to see that we've got someone in Ralph Priso who can be a deputy for Bradley in a way that we all hoped Liam Fraser was going to be way back when he was on our team.
You made an interesting point there, Jeff, where you're like, it's really what the game needed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll go as far as saying I actually think Michael Bradley has been one of the more consistent players for TFC this season. I don't think he's had a poor season. I don't know if he's been even the worst midfielder for TFC this year. I mean, if we're choosing maybe one all-star so far from this TFC team, it probably is Michael Bradley, just based on his whole sample size of this season. Against New York City FC, it wasn't what the team needed, sure. But moving forward, I still think it's, like you said, it's his spot to lose. They're not all of a sudden going to, I don't know, maybe Perez will do this, but I don't think they're all of a sudden just going to drop Michael Bradley from the starting 11.
No, you can't.
Josie Altidore, however, as you said, Jeff, they can't. He's the captain. He's heart and soul of the team, like as Perez said. Josie Altidore, however, that's a little bit of a different story.
It really is.
2 reasons. Is one, this isn't the first time we're talking about Josie Altidore like this.
Nope.
We've talked about Josie Altidore like this for a very long time before he even came back. And 2, I'll give the third reason after, but 2 is, oh man, I kind of lost my train of thought there. Let me see if I can spark some magic, but I'll go to my third point first then.
Sure.
So, Achara, there's someone now who's there that is capable of really offering TFC something they don't have up top, and that's an Achara. And Javier Perez was sort of asked about Achara after the game, and I found this quote really interesting.
Let's hear it.
He said, the question was, it's 2 games in a row where Achara has come off the bench and made an impact, and he's done this after a lengthy injured layoff. Just wondering what you have made of him since he's come back, and is he ready to potentially play to start a game and possibly go a full 90 minutes if required? And this was his response. I think we have been pushing Achara due to the urgency and the situation the team is in right now. As you said, he's made a big impact, or a significant impact, in the last game. He made, again, an impact today. He's a player that has different qualities to other players on the team, and I think that's what makes a team versatile. A team that has players with different characteristics and can bring something different to the table. I think we have been pushing to get him on the field. We have been pushing to get him ready. And tonight, we made another extra step, 45 minutes. We'll see in the next game if he's ready to get a little bit more playing time.
I think that's so smart. I really do. But I mean, the problem is that this is all of our attackers, right? They've all got a knock, or they're flow-based guys that need minutes. Or I mean, which one? We don't have a fully healthy go-to attacker on the squad. Maybe Patrick Mullins, but we can agree that he's not a start. I mean, it pains me to say it, but we can agree that he's way more effective as an impact sub than as a starting attacker.
So that Achara, again, the interesting tidbit that caught me there is he went 45 minutes today, and we'll see if he can go even longer next time. Which to me kind of reads that, okay, if you're going to play longer than 45 minutes, that probably means you're starting the game.
No, fair point.
Right? And that just reminded me of my second point about Josie Altidore. Josie Altidore actually makes a bigger impact on the game off the bench as a super sub. The energy that he brings onto the pitch, whenever his name gets called on the board, you see BMO Field start to, wake up, start to erupt. And I think Josie Altidore right now at this point in his career, he's best suited, as Will Dunn's saying, coming on as a super sub and really injecting a different type of look for this TFC team, especially if they need a goal. So for me, I know maybe he won't like to hear this, but I think Josie Altidore is better suited right now to play 20 minutes, 30 minutes moving forward as a super sub, because he can actually offer something there. And I don't think he's been as effective as, when he started games. So perhaps something Perez has picked up on as well, something to definitely keep an eye on moving forward. But Jeff, quickly.
I think Achara is also a very good sub. So do we start Dwyer? I mean, here's a guy that needs to get into rhythm, right?
No, please no. Please no.
So who do you start? You start,
Achara.
Okay, all right.
I think for sure we start Achara. He's a versatile player, so, he can definitely change up the style of play that he needs. He can, offer TFC a couple of different looks there up front. And I think Pozuelo especially, like, he has someone to play a ball through too. Whereas in the past, with Josie Altidore, for whatever reason, that just hasn't worked since Josie Altidore has turned the corner and is over 30 years old. I mean, I don't think his movement's the same as it was in the past, and I think he needs to find a way to redefine himself as a player right now, because whatever it is that he's doing, it isn't working right now. So why not? It seems desperate for points. Why not go with what's working? And that seems to be small sample size, but that seems to be Achara right now. So on that note, Jeff, after the gutsy substitution by Javier Perez, he had his interim tag removed by the club, and he was given the keys for the rest of the season, as the team announced yesterday that Javier Perez will be the head coach of Toronto FC for the remainder of the 2021 season. It's the first time that the team has actually publicly backed Perez, as they never officially announced him as the interim head coach of the team. Overall, Jeff, how would you make Javier? What have you made of Javier Perez's performance so far? How would you rate it? The team is 2 wins, 4 draws, 1 loss in 7 games under Perez. They've picked up 10 points. Jeff, how would you rate Perez's performance so far?
Well, I mean, here's my thoughts on the interim tag announcement. I mean, they basically announced that he's still the interim coach. It was a bit of a flat announcement, but I think the devil here is in the details. It was brought up on the WTR threads that if you look at the Instagram post of the announcement, Yef liked it, Paz liked it. So the players publicly stated that they came out of the woodwork to publicly sort of support this decision. I think this is sort of a move that establishes that everybody's playing for their jobs for the rest of the season, Javi and the rest of the team. And it's been writ large on social media posts. With respect to answering your question, I'm not going to give him an A. I would probably give him a B-. There's been a lot of draws. We can have the argument as to whether, what he can do with the roster as it stands. But it's not an A performance. I mean, it's definitely in the B range. I'm happy for him because he's been given his voice carries more weight now, at least until the end of the season, than it did before.
And I think that's an important point, especially after the substitutions that were made last match, right?
Exactly.
Is he had the nerve to take out both Michael Bradley and Josie Altidore, and then 3 days after, he's been given that appointment for the rest of the season. So I think it's so important for the club to finally come out and back Perez publicly, especially after those 2 decisions. If you're still the interim coach, you never know what happens with a disgruntled Josie Altidore or disgruntled Michael Bradley there in the locker room. But if the club comes out and backs them, like we've been saying, no one player is bigger than the club. And, I like that decision by the club to come out and do that at this time.
So do I.
Like I said, he was never officially appointed the interim manager. So perhaps this has something to do with that as well. I think
it sets a tone in that locker room, right, from the top down, right? Like
exactly.
Javi's playing for more permanence, and so shall the rest of the team. So I do think it sets a message, and it's a very simple one. Everybody's playing for their jobs, and I like it.
Javi's earned his stripes too, right? Like as Will Dunn's saying, is like it seems as at first, the club was kind of unsure of what to expect from Perez, and now they have more confidence in him, which is bang on because
Bang on, yeah.
they weren't even willing to appoint Perez in their press conference as the interim head coach. They just said he would be in charge next match.
Yeah.
And they didn't say what's happening after the match after. And Perez, to his credit, he was just like, I'm just focused on this match. And after that match, he's like, I'm just focused on the next match. So I think the message was clear from the club is that Perez was never given that interim role permanently. So as you're saying, yeah, the club announced that they took off his interim tag, but essentially it is giving him the interim role the rest of the year because they didn't announce what's happening after that. So I think that's just more of an overdue kudos. Okay, you earned this. Let's see where it goes from here. And so far, Eric Zavaleta said it. He likened Javier Perez to Greg Vanney.
I'm seeing a lot of similarities.
And I am too. And one, like I've mentioned this in the past, but there's a couple of TFC players have told me this is Armas was completely different from Vanney in the sense that Armas really stressed a lot of intangibles. He was like a best friend. You could go talk to him. Is a very good person. But Greg Vanney just knew football, just knew soccer. And that's the same sort of sentiment we're hearing from TFC players when they talk about Javier Perez. It's just how much he knows about the game. And I think you need more of a coach than you do of a coach like Armas, which stressed, like I said, a lot of intangibles and a lot
for this locker room. Absolutely. I mean, they're used to a tune going one way, and absolutely, I think for this locker room, he's a much better fit. And he's not as stubborn, but of course that could be down to not having an official job title like Armas did and a clear mandate. Nobody knows, but. We saw, I don't know if you saw the All for One clip that the club dropped. I think it was last night, but we got a little tease of Javi's post game team talk. Man, he's got ice in his veins. I mean, he's so calm, cool, collected. He speaks with a certain gravitas. It just comes from, like you said, his sort of encyclopedic knowledge of the sport. You can see that coming through loud and clear. That may end up being an albatross, right? The more you know about something, the more inflexible you can be sometimes. But I haven't seen it yet. I've only seen positivity from that, and that's why his grade's so high, considering that we're still in the basement of MLS, and our defense is Swiss cheese, and no moves in the transfer window, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot to be negative about, but there's, Coach Javi has given us a real injection of positivity because he's such a calming influence in what was so recently unfettered chaos. So
yeah, and you mentioned calming there a couple of times.
Yeah,
if there's one word, Armas, the one word we could use to kind of, tag along with his sort of identity was high energy, high pressing style of play. If there's one buzzword that's used, maybe press is for our misses, but there's one buzzword that's used around Javier Perez, literally from all the TSC players we've spoken to, is that he has this calmness about him, this way to efficiently communicate what he's expecting out of them. And I think,
very
as you
stoic,
said, Jeff, it's very, very evident when you speak to him, when you hear him speak, and hopefully this continues to translate into positive results for this team. Now, Jeff, one last question before we wrap up. TFC right now, they are 9 points out of a playoff spot. We are at the halfway point of the MLS season. There is 16 games left to play, which means there's 48 points left on the table. Like I said, 9 points out of a playoff spot. They do have a lot of teams to leapfrog in between them and that final playoff spot because they are, as many are pointing out in the chat, they are in last place right now. But like I said, just 9 points out. Does this team have a shot at making the playoffs still, Jeff?
No, I don't think so. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to enjoy this lost season, but I don't think so. I think that there is. I've seen your math, and it's capable math. I've seen your glass half full tweet, and I enjoyed it, and I want to believe. Credit to Josh Cloak. He came on here 3-4 months ago and said the same thing when we were all still in the in the afterglow of the Champions League run. No. I mean, we don't control our own destiny. If we would have to win outright, and a whole lot of things would have to go right with other teams losing. In a league with this kind of parity, I don't think so. I mean, I'm not gonna. I'd be so happy if we were able to squeak in. But I don't see it happening.
So let me ask you, what are the odds that you're giving TFC? How much percentage do you think they have? A 20. That's still
chance.
Okay. So there is a chance. That's a 1 in 5 shot.
Okay.
Now, if you guys haven't seen my tweet, let me go glass half full on you.
Let's do it.
After TFC take on New England at home this Saturday, they have 15 games remaining this MLS season. 11 of those games are against teams that are not in a playoff spot right now. 4 of those games are against teams that are in a playoff spot, but none of those teams are top 3 in either conference. Only one of those games against one of those 4 teams that are in a playoff spot are away from home, and that's at Colorado. So then you have Philadelphia at home, which
Ouch.
I mean is way better. It's way better than playing them at Subaru Park.
Yeah.
The last time TFC actually played Philadelphia at home, they won, and it wasn't even at BMO Field. So maybe there is some silver lining there. You have Nashville again at home, which I think TFC showed that that's a beatable team when TFC is on the front foot there. And trying to think of who the last one is right now. But whoever it is, it's no one significant. Oh, DC United.
Yeah, it was, and they're on a tear. So
they're playing some good football right now, but again, they're not a top 3 team in the Eastern Conference, right? TFC are getting all of those games out of the way early, and now we look at the other 11 games. You play Inter Miami, who has been really the laughing stock of this league since joining the league 3 times.
People in glass houses. We're sort of in a glass house right now.
For sure.
Yeah.
But relatively speaking, now they don't have to play, they're not playing the New Englands or New York City FCs a bunch of times the rest of the way. They're playing Inter Miami 3 times. And then you're playing Atlanta United, who is literally in a similar position as TFC. They're still looking for their head coach. They're a team that's like TFC. They're in shambles a bit. And I'd even argue
that they just reloaded like crazy though.
I did see that,
but new attacker, yeah.
It was also they tried getting 14 different players during that time.
Atlanta United. I mean, of course they were linked with. I think they were linked with Messi. So whatever.
But half of them apparently turned them down, and that just goes to show kind of the state that Atlanta United's in. But again, like Zeus pointed out, they've reloaded, so who knows? But 3 times they play Atlanta United, and then they play SC Cincinnati 2 times, and then you play Montreal 2 times, and then you play the Chicago Fire. In terms of strength of schedule, I would be surprised if TFC did not have the easiest strength of schedule the rest of the way in terms of the teams that they're playing.
Sure.
Who knows what can happen the rest of the way? I'm not saying they go out and they make the playoffs, but there is a path forward for them to do so.
Absolutely is. Absolutely.
And it's not the most uphill battle. If they can find a way to get points against teams that are not really playoff teams in this league, who knows, man? Who knows?
So to follow up, because you have a second question that after that, do you want achieving a playoff berth to be the goal of the rest of this season, or would you be willing to maybe free some young guns? I mean, we need to know what we got in all of these guys, right? I don't necessarily think that.
I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we're there yet, Jeff. I think when you do that, when you just throw out a team full of youngsters, that has to be when you know you're out of the playoff hunt. I don't think TFC are out of that playoff hunt yet.
I agree with you.
9 points out, 16 games left, 48 points on the table. They're far from out of playoff spot officially. Now, if we're having this conversation at the end of August, TFC are still in the same position, then sure, then we have to free the young guns. But right now, prioritize points As many as pointing out in the chat, if they can find a way to play like they did in the second half against New York City the rest of the way, definitely accomplishable. But that's
Too
a big
bad.
if.
Too bad soccer games aren't 45 minutes. as
Yeah,
Yvonne said.
seriously.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
But yeah, Jeff, I think let's wrap up there.
Sure.
We're going long overdue.
That's what happens when we gab, Mike. That's what happens.
I
when we have a
know,
Mitch
man. We have so much to talk about, especially after Canada's.
Oh wait, you didn't answer your own
amazing
question.
run.
Do you think TFC are going to make the playoffs?
Do I think they're going to?
Yeah,
I do.
Wow, I love it.
I do.
I love it. I love it.
I don't know if that's just blind optimism, but I've said since day one that this team is on paper, it has the quality to be one of the best teams in MLS. I think, we're reverting back to a classic 4-2-3-1. And for me, that's always sort of found success for Toronto,
Okay.
even under Javier Perez. So if they can keep things simple, they can continue this honestly run of form overall in the past 7 games. Then I do think it's feasible, especially when you consider their opponents. So yeah, put me on record, man. I think TFC are going to find a way to squeak into the playoffs.
Awesome.
But on that high note, extremely high note, let's
do the Michael Singh injury report.
No, let's wrap up. Let's wrap up.
All right.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I don't really have much, anyways, on the injury report. So
when it returns, it's going to be spectacular. So don't worry about it. We'll have an injury report for you eventually.
Yeah, so thank you guys so much again. The chat was on fire today. Some of it yelling at us, some of it, agreeing with us. So we love to see all of your contributions. Thank you guys so much. Always a blast here. Thank you to Meaghen Johnson of TSN for joining us right off the top. Such a spectacular guest to talk about that women's national team. Make sure, again, you guys go follow her on Twitter because you will have some more updates today.
What a good follow.
There is a press conference going on here at BMO Field at 2 p.m. with some of the women's national team players. So be sure to check that out. Thank you to our producer there, Sophia, for bearing with us as usual lately. Just been going long, but she's never complaining, so we really appreciate that. Sophia, thank you to Kevin and Edwin for all the work that they do behind the scenes. I guess on behalf of myself, on behalf of Jeffrey P. Nesker.
Yep, please like and subscribe. We don't ever do that, and we should probably bring that into our repertoire for the sign off. But
yeah, please, guys, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you guys get your podcast pick. This is uploaded after. Please upload, or please like and subscribe. Please upload. Yeah, please upload this.
And then steal our content and upload it on torrent sites. Absolutely.
Please like and subscribe. We really appreciate all of your support. But like I was saying, on behalf of myself, on behalf of Jeffrey P. Nesker, until next week. Ciao.
Ciao.